Chapter 1 First Meeting. What a bad luck. The fortune teller said that this year was too old. As a staunch supporter of materialism, she responded with a snort of disdain. However, reality is always ruthless, cruel, ironic, and realistic. The woman's shrill screams were heard in her ears. She walked to the window and stood on tiptoes to look outside the house. She was sitting on a sloop. Outside was the endless blue ocean. A group of men in aprons rowed the oars vigorously under the supervision of the supervisor, allowing the ship to move smoothly on the water, without sea breeze. The apron mentioned here is not the classic red and black plaid holiday dress worn by Scottish men, but a piece of linen wrapped around the waist. Miku squatted down, holding his head and struggling to recall everything that had just happened. Just a few seconds, minutes, or hours ago, she was walking on the sidewalk with a newly bought book, concentrating on reading while walking home. Suddenly, she heard a scream, turned around, and saw a telephone pole behind her falling straight down. At this time, some prehistoric giant pitch shouted, "Run forward." Reading the book, seeing that her brain was short-circuited, she didn't even think about it, so she just ran forward. Naturally, she couldn't beat the reverse speed of the telephone pole. By the time she realized that she should have fled in both directions, it was already too late. She could only watch the pole hit her head. When she came to her senses, she was inexplicably standing in this simple little house. The door was pushed open with force, and she looked warily at the man who walked into the house. He was carrying a sword and wearing armor. The ferocious look on his face was really scary. Mika couldn't help but take a few steps back. The person who came had no intention of approaching her and just said in a rough voice, "Bring the wine in the cellar to the prince's room." Standing motionless, her slowness irritated the other person. "Why are you standing there? Don't you know the way to the prince's room?" "Well, I don't know," Miku replied carefully and honestly. "Besides, I don't know the way to the cellar either." "I think it was the fall on the deck that knocked you silly," the man scolded impatiently, walked to the corner, picked up a can of wine, and roughly thrust it into her arms. "Follow me." As the only child in the family, she has never been angry like this since she was a child. Not understanding the situation at hand, Miku gritted his teeth and endured it, followed the man obediently, crossed the deck, and came to a large, well-decorated room. The stripped-off blonde girl was lying on the soft mattress, her body wrapped in a sheet, while a man with long silver hair and the word "Prince" written on his temperament and clothing was carefully applying medicine to the scar on her back. The blonde girl woke up from her coma, her face turned pale with shock. She wrapped herself tightly in the sheets and struggled backwards. "Don't come near me." This scene is so ambiguous. From the looks of it, the blonde girl will definitely be eaten clean by that prince. Although I sympathize with the fragile girl, she can't save herself at the moment. It's not that she refuses to save her, it's that she can't save her even if she risks her life. Miko put down the wine can, exited the room, and stood outside the door. The trembling and helpless look of the blonde girl was reflected in the corner of her eyes. She said, "Just die." She was about to open the door again when the man in armor suddenly burst into her sight. He lifted her onto his shoulders, strode back to the simple cabin, and threw her to the floor without mercy. "What are you doing?" Miku, who was thrown so hard that his whole body ached, could no longer care about whether to protect himself or not, and protested angrily. The man knelt down and his affectionate eyes wandered over her chest. "I've liked you for a long time, Alma. Don't worry, I will treat you well." This lie usually appears in extremely unfavorable situations for women, but she'll hear it one day. Without saying anything else, Mika stood up and quickly ran towards the door, but was grabbed by the man and pushed to the ground hard. "Where do you want to escape to?" He smiled, and it was the most disgusting smile Miko had ever seen in her life. His breath blowing on her face made her gag like she was forced to swallow a whole fly. "You are just a maid, and I am the prince's capable soldier. You cannot escape from my grasp." Miku frowned. Since just now, this guy has been reciting lines that have been used until they are rotten. What kind of third-rate script has she wandered into? Let me go! She tried all her strength to push away the obscene man pressing down on her. She didn't seem to be cooperating with him, but she really couldn't think of any other words to refuse except this one. The warm liquid splashed on her face. Miku closed her eyes subconsciously, and there was no movement, even though the man's weight was overwhelming her body. She slowly opened her eyes, and a man with an upper body and a linen skirt stood in front of him. He had short black hair, delicate features, and the dagger in his hand was still dripping with red blood. His eyes revealed an aura that was extremely inconsistent with the attire of a slave. The soldier who attempted to violate him was breathless. Miku quickly sat up and pushed him away, although the development of the plot was ridiculous. But thank you for the bloody. He retreated to the corner and silently stared at the savior, who was pulling off the dead man's clothes. After a long time, Miku finally made a voice. Well, he is bigger than you. This uniform should be too big for you. Chapter 2 comics I haven't read yet. Unas quietly followed the suspicious person, replaced a sailor on the boat, and secretly found out that the person who kidnapped the Nile daughter was Prince Ismi of Betito. He waited patiently for the sailing ship to arrive at Betito, found an opportunity to kill a lone soldier, changed into his clothes, and then blended into Betito's escort. Everything was as planned. The only question now was, what should he do with the maid, who was almost raped? If he faced a strong warrior, he would kill her without hesitation. However, what he saw now was an unarmed poor girl. He couldn't bear to kill an innocent woman, but there was no guarantee that she would not inform Prince Ismi if he let her go. In that case, all the efforts he had made so far would be in vain. If you don't mind, I can help change it. Spreading her hands, Unas calmly handed the cloak and coat to Miko's hands. She skillfully used knives and other simple tools to modify the soldier's uniform. This was all thanks to the hard work of her traditional and conservative mother. As a girl, she must learn to cut and cook, and anything related to family matters was not difficult for her. Wanyuos took the altered clothes and tried them on, and found that they fit perfectly. Are you helping me? As a reward for saving me, this little thing is nothing. Mickey smiled brightly. She was not a fool. Although the man in front of her hesitated and did not make a move, she could clearly feel his murderous intention. It is not easy for you to get into that group of people. Their skin color is much lighter than yours. In order to prevent her whereabouts from being leaked, killing her was the wisest choice, but Una simply sat down and looked at this sweet-looking girl with interest. So what should I do? Just as Miku was about to open his mouth to suggest that he put a layer of white ash on his face, a high-octave female voice suddenly came from outside the door. Don't touch me. King Betito. Prince Ismi, I am not a dancer, and I am not an Egyptian. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it. I don't want you to believe it. Just don't insult me. Una stood up and hid by the door, quietly spying on the situation on the shore. Miko also followed his example and looked out. The beautiful girl with golden hair stubbornly and bravely met the silver-haired prince's scrutinizing gaze. My name is Carolito, an American, the daughter of a clean family. From your point of view, I am a future human being. I attach great importance to the human history created by ancient people. I am a future human being of the 20th century. As the wound on her back split open, blood seeped out of the skin and soaked Carol's clothes. The fiery pain and excessive blood loss caused dizziness. Her breath gradually weakened, her voice became quieter, and finally her body softened, and she collapsed on the ground. While Unas was worried, a proud smile couldn't help but spread out from the corners of his lips. That was their daughter of the Nile River in Egypt. Even in the face of King Betito, she vowed to maintain her pride and never bow her head. Miko's mouth was slightly open, and she clearly heard a loud thunderclap. Carolito, the name was very familiar to her ears. Although she had not read this work, as the originator of time travel comics, a classic of an era, as a veteran, every comic book fan knows that this is the world of the famous Daughter of the Nile. The blonde girl in front of you is the protagonist of the book, known as Little Poirot, also known as White Lotus, and the Coronado of Carolito, also known as the Madonna Master. She has been in the comics industry for 30 years, and a large number of readers have been promoted from young and ignorant young girls to mothers of green girls. However, this protagonist has maintained the original state of an innocent girl for decades. Her weird IQ, which can overturn Darwin's theory of evolution, has been constantly criticized. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. No wonder there were such bloody plots and dialogues that lowered my IQ just now. My roommate, who was chasing this comic a few days ago, was still throwing books and yelling indignantly. Not only are the characters getting worse and worse, but repeating the plot over and over again is just a show-off and a rip-off. I am glad that I didn't pursue it back then, but now I have been thrown into the biggest pit in history. I have heard the introduction, but I have never seen the episodes. I would have asked my roommate, who is a diehard fan of Daughters of the Nile, who is in pain and even more painful, to read the whole series. Even if you can't be a goddess priest with the power of prophecy, it is still useful to avoid disasters. Slowly sliding against the wall and sitting on the ground, she hugged her bent knees and buried her head in it. She remembered that the manga magazine she was holding at the time did have the serialization of Daughters of the Nile, but it also clearly had Attack on Titan, One Piece, The Myth of Hades, Gintama, and other juvenile comics she had read. She actually wanted to travel to the world of comics. Why not let her join the Survey Corps under Captain Levi, or work as a handyman on Luffy's ship, or go to Athena's sanctuary to work as a soy sauce flower girl and make love to Yapafika? At the very least, it would be better to starve and be poor with the Master House trio to escape from debts than to be trapped in a work she has never seen before and feel helpless. Speaking of which, my roommate has been complaining about this comic that the rarest thing is IQ and the easiest thing to encounter is second rate. Could it be that, because the reason for her time travel is so stupid that people can't look at it directly, and the gods in the sky are deeply worried about her IQ, so she was thrown into this extremely pure and full of YY girl comics who want to survive without losing too many brain cells? The captives who escaped from Egypt and returned to Betito knelt down in front of Ismi. They were surprised to find Carol kneeling on the ground and truthfully reported her miracles of curing snake venom, smelting iron swords, and purifying sewage. Cold sweat broke out on the palm of Una's holding the hilt of the sword. Prince Ismi had realized the value of the Daughter of the Nile. She was a bargaining chip that could be used to blackmail King Memphis and even the entire Egypt. He was nervously watching the scene outside. Carol's face was pale, and he was leaning in the corner in fear. Miku, who had her head buried, also heard the dong-dong sound coming from outside. She said to Uno in a dull voice, "You'd better get out quickly. Let her know that you are here waiting for an opportunity to rescue her so that she can rest assured. Otherwise, her wounds will be worsened by bumping around like this." Just go out like this? Apparently after Miko's reminder, Una seemed to be aware of the serious problems caused by different skin colors. Miku, who was hit hard and in a depressed state, kept her head buried. She stretched out her hand weakly and waved. "Don't worry, put on the hat and pull it down a little. Those Bitito soldiers should not have such normal IQ. They will definitely ignore your skin color. If anyone asks you, just answer that you are a sailor and sunbathe on the Mediterranean." Unas remained motionless, staring at the sluggish Miko. It was obvious that he was worried that he would betray him. After glancing at him, Mika stood up helplessly and secretly spat at his roommate far away in his heart. Isn't it said that the most important thing in this comic is mental retardation? Why would the man in front of them consider details that are so difficult for them to think of? "I'll go out with you." Having a maid who is better than Ted by your side shouldn't attract so much attention. Walking to Una's, she took his hand and put it around her waist. "I know you don't trust me, so I'll just let you hold her hostage like this, right? I'm not kidding with my own life." Prince Ismi's cold voice came from outside the door. "Call the doctor and take her to the South Palace where I live for treatment." "No, leave me alone. Don't touch me. Carol stood up with difficulty and stumbled forward, trying to escape from Prince Ismi, but she fell down again due to her unsteadiness. She held on to the pillar next to her and helplessly closed her eyes as blue as the Nile River. There can be no further hesitation. She must be calmed down. Unas took Miko and blended into the advancing guard. When passing by Carol, he quickly soothed her uneasy mood in a very low voice. "Carol, cheer up. I will save you." Carol raised her head in surprise. During this period, Unas had been following her all day long to monitor her, so she could naturally hear his voice. Looking around hurriedly, the prince's guards walked towards the palace in an orderly manner. Among the soldiers, there was a figure whose back belonged to Unas. "Unas is here. Unas is here to save her." Carol lowered her head and covered her face with her hands to cover up the faint smile of joy on her lips. She became quiet and was sent to the southern palace, surrounded by many bited people. Chapter 3: The Admired Girl. Unas followed the guards into Petito's palace, and Miko followed him closely, observing the palace. She had seen restored ancient Egyptian buildings in documentaries. Compared with their colorful and rich patterns, this huge stone palace, although solid, seemed very monotonous in terms of art and aesthetics. Not only was the color mostly dominated by depressing gray, but the decoration was too simple, and there was nothing outstanding that particularly caught her eye. "If you are trying to escape, I will kill you immediately." Although it could not be called gentle, the voice that had always been calm became cold at this moment. Miko glanced sideways at Unas and quickly explained to him, "No, I am just visiting this palace. Judging from your appearance, you should be a maid in the palace. Now you have a chance to see where you work." Unas' sarcasm made it clear that he didn't believe her excuse. Miko let out a long sigh, fell into decadence again, and complained in a depressed voice, "It's not what I want. I hope this kind of opportunity never comes to me in my life." In the midst of the shouting, the guards came into the hall. Unas clamped Miko's wrist tightly and asked her to stand beside him. Miko could only stand in the corner resigned to his fate, while rehearsing in his mind the heroic scene in which he braved life and death and rushed forward to reveal Unas's spy identity. He didn't know what the consequences of doing so would be. "Can Daughter of the Nile and Early, can you go back when it's over?" "Prince Ismi, what are you going to do with that girl?" The anxious voice attracted Miko's attention. She raised her eyes to look at the beautiful girl nestling in the prince's arms. She looked like a very jealous little woman. Ismi gracefully raised her hand to lift her chin, with a charming smile on her lips. Those talking eyes stared at Mila tenderly, making her unable to extricate herself, and fell deeper into her obsession with him. Mira, please take care of Mom." Miko rolled his eyes. The real meaning of this sentence is you don't have to worry about my affairs, right? In this case, don't use your charm to seduce others. It's so pitiful. Ismi let go of Mira and walked towards King Betito, discussing with his father the blonde girl who had attracted his interest. King Betito raised his glass to his proud son. "What an incredible girl." "Yes, father." Ismi sat on her own stool, picked up the glass filled with wine handed by the maid, and responded with a faint smile. She was not afraid to speak her mind even in front of father. "I was really moved by her." Puff. Because he was standing in a remote corner, Miko's not-so-loud laughter fortunately did not reach Izmir's ears, but it aroused the sideways glances of other attendants around him. "Error 500, server error. 1500, that's an error. There was an error. Please try again later. That's all we know." Unas opened his mouth, but in the end, in order not to attract attention, he chose to respond to her frame-up with silence. After finally surviving the dust-washing banquet, the maids and guards began to change shifts. Unas took Miko to find the room where Carol was imprisoned. The two of them walked to the South Palace in silence, one after the other. "Just now, I'm sorry." In order to ease the dull and awkward atmosphere, Mika spoke first. Unas responded perfunctorily. At this moment, nothing interested him except looking for Carol. "Have you seen Ismi's tender eyes? That natural expression is the best reflection of the true heart. He will definitely fall in love with Carol next. He is not afraid to tell his true feelings even in front of his father. Thinking of Ismi's murmur just now, Miko couldn't help but laugh again, because he has been doted on and flattered by others since he was a child, but he feels very fresh about the resistance from the lower-class women and then becomes interested and finally falls in love. This is basically a masochistic tendency. King Memphis also fell in love with Carol. Although the masochistic and sarcastic words in this woman's mouth were not those of King Memphis, Una still felt inexplicably unhappy. He replied in a dark voice, "Carol is the daughter of the Nile god. She is very special. It is not surprising that Prince Ismi would fall in love with her." Turning his head and blinking at him, Miko's face showed an almost mocking smile. Yes, the key problem is not the model, but the people. "What are you doing?" Severe questioning was abruptly inserted into the conversation between Miko and Unas. Their suspicious words and deeds attracted the attention of a group of patrolling guards. If they were questioned, they might reveal their identity as Egyptians. Unas put his hand on the sword at his waist and waited nervously for the guards to approach. Suddenly Miko, who was standing in front of him, pushed him with all his strength. Unas was caught off guard and took a few steps back. Just when he thought that the Bitito maid would wait for an opportunity to escape, she covered her face and began to cry sadly. "You said you would marry me, and you swore you would love me forever. Now you are obsessed with that despicable woman. Apart from her bigger breasts, longer legs, and slimmer waist, there is nothing I can't compare with her." Unas was stunned by this sudden turn of events. He stared at Miko's one-man show dumbfounded and didn't know how to interrupt for a while. He raised his head from his hands. His face was stained with tears, and the tears blurred Miko's vision. He continued to point at Unas and scolded hysterically. "I've been with you wholeheartedly for 10 years. But you broke up when you said we wanted to. How should I explain to my father and mother? Say it. Say it." The patrolling guards let out unabashed gasps of exclamation. The maid seemed to be only 16 or 17 years old, and the guard was only about 18 at most, but he had been having a private affair for 10 years? Mika stared at the guards who were watching the excitement and blurted out in a bad tone, "Look, what are you looking at? I've never seen anyone fall out of love." "Hey, be gentle, otherwise he will really be scared away by you." One of the guards whistled, but immediately lowered his head dejectedly under the angry glare of the guard captain. "Go resolve your matters outside and don't make any noise in the palace." The prince kidnapped the beloved woman of the king of Egypt and came back. Now the whole army is under martial law, but these two people are entangled in such boring things here. The leading guard captain showed displeasure at the frivolous behavior of his subordinates. "Just go." Miku pouted, pushing and dragging Unas out. "If you don't explain clearly today, I will die with you." After walking entangled for a while, he finally escaped from the sight of the patrolling guard and let go of Unas. Miku took a long breath and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. "I was scared to death." Unas couldn't guess what the maid was thinking. She had a chance to escape, knowing that she was an Egyptian spy who would be detrimental to Bitito. Instead of betraying him, she saved him from danger. "You." Seeing Una's doubtful expression, Miku wiped away the remaining tears on his cheeks and made a V-shaped victory gesture to him. "I joined the drama club in school." "You are a Bitito. Why are you helping me?" "I am not a Bitito. My soul comes from the distant land of the rising sun. Unfortunately, it is possessed by this maid. Helping Egypt or Bitito will not harm my country, so I don't care." After listening to her explanation, Unas looked at her with a sympathetic look, which clearly meant that he pitied her. From his expression, you could tell that he must think there was something wrong with his head. "You're kidding, didn't I say that? You saved me, and I should repay you." Although he felt strongly dissatisfied that he believed in the existence of gods but doubted that souls could possess people, Miko still compromised and changed the story, and then continued to endure the dull atmosphere, and followed Unas to search for traces of Carol. So boring. Just when Miko was seriously considering whether it would be better to simply escape, Una suddenly stopped and pulled her behind the bushes. Chapter 4: Fighting. Following his gaze, Izmi and the spy who had escaped from Egypt were standing in the courtyard. They were staring at the grill of a window. Carol held a wooden stick in both hands and struggled to twist a piece of wet cloth between two bronze bars. As the cloth tightened, the window frame slowly twisted and deformed, and finally broke with a bang. Izmi rushed into the room, grabbed Carol's wrist and flicked her hard, and she was pushed to the ground, unable to move. She was so weak, but she broke the cage that imprisoned her with a pair of hands that might not even be able to push the door open. With such soft hands, my hands will break if I exert any force. Desire. Izmi gritted his teeth angrily and glared at the stubborn blonde girl. This time I didn't just use a whip. Izmi's entourage rushed to the window and carefully checked whether there were any traces of filing on the window frame. After confirming that it was intact, he started to test it himself. Without any effort, the two window frames were easily broken. He couldn't help but exclaimed, "Prince, as expected. Even a girl can break it with this method." Putting away his angry expression, his eyes gradually softened as he stared at Carol. He let go of her wrist, lifted her up from the ground, and held her in his arms, caressing her fair and delicate cheeks as if holding an extremely precious treasure. Carol took a breath and looked at Izmi in shock, feeling uneasy because she didn't know what he was planning. "I really like you." "Huh? What are you talking about now?" It was not just Carol who was surprised, but also Una's, who was hiding in the bushes. A low laughter came to his ears. He subconsciously turned to the snickering girl next to him and saw her flipping her hair coolly and raising her face proudly. "Please call me Spoiler." Unas didn't understand what a spoiler meant, but he wasn't too interested either. He quickly turned around and continued to monitor Izmi's every move. If Egypt's daughter of the Nile god, their patron goddess, was moved by Prince Petito's confession, it would be a very serious matter for both King Memphis and Egypt. Ignoring Carol's surprise, Izmi laughed out loud and whispered as if talking to himself, "Falling in love is wonderful." Is this a love caused by the principle of leverage? Although she often insults each other with her friends about a pair of losers who went to college to get a diploma, but she can watch popular science programs. Miku touched her chin in disbelief. Didn't I say that the Egyptians didn't all use this method to build the pyramids? Why does Izmi look so surprised? Could it be that the Discovery Channel is a liar? From just now, this woman has been mumbling words that he doesn't understand at all. Wunos just pretended not to hear and focused all his attention on Carol. Izmi affectionately approached her face, pinched her chin, and forced her to look at him, and continued his affectionate confession. "I said I like you very much. Love is such a wonderful thing." Ah. Mira, who came to Izmi's room with the soup, clearly heard her sweetheart's expression of love. Her hands loosened, and the tray and pottery bowl fell from her hands, just like her fragile heart, which was smashed into pieces. "No, Carol, you can't trust him. You can't accept Prince Izmi." Unas clenched his right fist and knitted his eyebrows together. He tried hard to control his anxious mood and forced himself to calm down, while pleasant thoughts filled his ears again. Unless her brain was whipped, no matter how handsome and attractive she is, only a slut will fall in love with the man who just whipped her to pieces. The sadomasochism of falling in love and killing each other will not become popular until another 20 years. Turning her head again, the Petito maid next to her seemed to have completely forgotten that she was hiding in the bushes. She grinned and stared at the scene in front of her attentively, her cheeks flushed slightly with excitement, as if she was enjoying the highlights of a drama. "If you can't control your words, then I'll have to use force to silence you." He withdrew his gaze from Izmi and Carol and turned to the cold-faced Unas. After a pause, Miko couldn't hold it back after all. "Has anyone ever told you that you have a kind and good face, and threats and other things coming out of your mouth have no deterrent effect?" When she came into contact with Unaz's unbearable fierce gaze, she lowered her eyelids with a gloomy expression and ended the conversation with a rhetorical question. Besides, can't you really see that I am trying my best to ease your tense nerves? Enough! If he wasn't in Bitito now, if he wasn't lurking in the enemy camp now, if he wasn't still busy with important missions, he would definitely teach this talkative woman a lesson. Ismay left Carol's room and ordered her entourage to find a doctor to treat her back injury. Unaz breathed a long sigh of relief and got up and left the courtyard. You're going to report to the King of Egypt the news that Prince Bitito has developed a wonderful love due to the principle of leverage, do you know? Pulling Miko forward quickly, Unaz remained silent and didn't even bother to glance at her. Will the King of Egypt lead his army to Bitito to save people? Unaz still didn't answer and left the palace with her expressionlessly. You just leave like this and don't have to continue looking at the daughter of the Nile? What if Prince Ismay, Overlord, forces his bow?